The cold river water was still dripping from her hair when she looked up at him, shivering violently, and asked the question that made time stop. "Will you stay if I undress?" Her voice trembled, not from embarrassment, but from the bone-deep cold that was turning her lips blue. Marcus stood frozen, his own soaked clothes clinging to his body, trying to process what his boss had just asked him in the middle of the woods, miles from anywhere, with darkness falling fast around them. If you love stories about unexpected, kindness, and the courage it takes to be vulnerable with each other, you're in the right place. Please subscribe to True Kindness Tales and hit that like button. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let me tell you how a single father's split-second decision led to a moment that would change two lives forever. Marcus had been working at Henderson Marketing for 3 years, always arriving early and staying late, quietly doing his job while trying to remain invisible. At 42, he'd perfected the art of blending into the background. As a single father to 7-year-old Emma, he couldn't afford to draw attention or risk his steady paycheck. Every morning, he dropped Emma at school, worked through lunch at his desk, and left exactly at 5 to pick her up from after-school care before the late fees kicked in. His co-workers barely knew him. His boss, Claire Henderson, probably couldn't have picked him out of a lineup until that Saturday afternoon in October. The company retreat had been mandatory. Marcus had tried to get out of it, worried about the cost of weekend childcare, but Emma's grandmother had offered to take her for the day. So he'd driven 2 hours north to the corporate retreat center, sat through the morning team-building exercises, and counted the minutes until he could leave. During lunch, Claire had announced an optional afternoon hike to a scenic overlook. Marcus had planned to skip it, but something made him go. Maybe it was the way Claire had looked at the trail map with such enthusiasm. Or maybe it was just the rare chance to be outdoors, instead of trapped in his small apartment. The group of 12 set out on the trail, but within an hour, people began dropping back, tired or bored. Marcus found himself near the front with Claire and 2 others. The path wound alongside the river, beautiful but steep in places. Claire was fit and confident, leading the way in her expensive hiking gear, pointing out landmarks and cracking jokes that made everyone laugh. Marcus stayed quiet as always, just following along. Then one of the other hikers suggested a shortcut back that split from the main trail. Claire wanted to see the overlook, so she said she'd continue on. The others turned back. Marcus hesitated. Something told him not to let her go alone, even though she clearly didn't need help and probably didn't want his company. But the words of his grandmother echoed in his mind. The woman who had raised him after his own parents died. "Sometimes being kind means doing the uncomfortable thing," she used to say. He told Claire he'd come along just to be safe. She'd shrugged, seeming indifferent, and they walked in silence. The trail got rockier, running right along the river's edge. They were making small talk about the company's upcoming projects when Claire's foot slipped on loose gravel. Marcus saw it happen as if in slow motion. She stumbled sideways, arms pinwheeling, and then she was falling toward the water. He lunged forward, grabbing for her jacket, but his fingers only brushed the fabric. She hit the river with a splash that sent his heart into his throat. The current was stronger than it looked. Claire surfaced, gasping, already 10 feet downstream. Marcus didn't think. He kicked off his shoes and jumped in. The cold knocked the air from his lungs. The river pulled at him, trying to drag him under. But he was a strong swimmer, had been on the swim team in high school a lifetime ago. He pushed through the current, reached Claire just as she went under again and grabbed her arm. She came up coughing and choking, her eyes wide with panic. Getting to shore was a brutal fight. The river didn't want to let them go. Marcus's muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but he held on to Claire and kicked with everything he had. Finally, his feet found rocky bottom, and he hauled them both onto the muddy bank, 30 yards downstream from where Claire had fallen. They collapsed on the ground, heaving and coughing up river water. It took several minutes before either of them could speak. When Marcus finally sat up, he realized how bad their situation was. They were soaked through, the sun was already sinking behind the mountains, and the temperature was dropping fast. October in the mountains meant nights in the 40s. They needed to get warm and dry, but they were at least a mile from the retreat center, and both of them were already shivering. Claire was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Her teeth chattered violently. Marcus knew the signs of hypothermia. His mind raced through options. They needed to move to generate heat, but Claire's coordination was already failing. That's when she looked at him with frightened eyes and said something that shocked him. "I can't feel my fingers. My clothes are so heavy. I need to get them off. But I can't get warm like this." Then she asked, the question that would haunt him. "Will you stay if I undress? I know this is weird, but I'm scared, and you can't leave me alone." Marcus understood immediately. This wasn't about anything inappropriate. This was about survival. His boss, this confident woman who ran a multi-million-dollar company, was vulnerable and terrified and asking for help in the most difficult way possible. He pulled off his own soaked jacket. "We both need to get out of these wet clothes," he said calmly. "Do you have anything dry in your backpack?" She nodded, still shaking. Marcus turned his back to give her privacy while she changed, keeping up a steady stream of conversation to keep her conscious and calm. He wrung out his own shirt as best he could and put it back on. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. When Claire said she was done, he turned around. She'd managed to get into a dry, long-sleeve shirt from her pack, though her pants were still soaked. "We need to move," Marcus said. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though her movements were slow and clumsy. Marcus offered his arm, and she took it without hesitation. They started back toward the retreat center, Marcus supporting most of her weight. He talked the whole way, asking her questions, telling her stories about Emma, anything to keep her alert and moving. He told her about Emma's love of dinosaurs, about their weekend routine of pancakes and cartoons, about the struggles of single parenthood that he never discussed at work. Claire listened, slowly warming up as they walked, and began asking questions. Real questions. When had his wife left? How did he manage work and parenting alone? What were his dreams for Emma? Marcus found himself opening up in ways he never had with anyone at work. By the time they saw the lights of the retreat center, they'd been walking for over an hour, and Marcus had shared more about his life than he had in 3 years at the company. The next Monday, Marcus expected things to return to normal. But Tuesday morning, Claire called him into her office. He went nervously, wondering if she was embarrassed about the weekend. Instead, she thanked him for saving her life and for his kindness on that long walk back. Then she said something that made his eyes sting with unexpected tears. "I learned more about you in 1 hour than I have about most people who've worked for me for years. That's my failure, not yours. You've been invisible here because I haven't been paying attention." She asked about his schedule, really asked, and when he explained about pickup times and childcare costs, she didn't judge. Instead, she worked with him to create a flexible schedule that let him work from home, 2 days a week, and adjust his hours to fit Emma's school schedule. She also gave him a raise, one that was long overdue, she said. But more than that, she started really seeing him. She'd ask about Emma, remember details from their conversations, and include him in projects that showcased his skills. The changes rippled through Marcus's life. The flexible schedule meant he could volunteer at Emma's school. The raise meant they could move to a better apartment and he could afford activities Emma had always wanted to try. But the biggest change was internal. Marcus stopped trying to be invisible. He started speaking up in meetings, sharing his ideas, connecting with co-workers. He realized that his kindness that day hadn't just saved Claire's life. It had saved his own in a different way. Claire changed too. She started paying attention to all her employees, learning about their lives, their challenges, their dreams. She implemented flexible working policies across the company. She created a culture where people felt seen and valued. When people asked what had inspired the changes, she told them about a man who'd jumped into a freezing river for a boss, who barely knew his name, and how his quiet kindness had taught her what leadership really meant. Sometimes kindness asks us to do uncomfortable things. Sometimes it means jumping into cold water, both literally and figuratively. Sometimes it means being vulnerable, admitting we need help, or seeing people we've overlooked. That day by the river, Marcus and Claire both took leaps of faith. He trusted his instinct to help. She trusted a near stranger with her fear and her life. And in that exchange of simple human kindness, both of them found something they'd been missing. The next time someone needs help, even in small ways, don't hesitate. Jump in, be present. Pay attention to the people around you. You never know how one act of kindness might ripple outward, changing not just one life, but 2 or 10 or hundreds. We all have the power to save each other in ways big and small. We just have to be brave enough to try. If this story touched your heart, share your own experiences with kindness in the comments below. Let's inspire each other to create more moments of genuine human connection in this world that needs it so much.